Hey guys, it's Vandy back again with another Card Fight Vanguard deck profile. Hope you guys enjoy. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and don't to Patreon because we're started. Today we have Polaris, the polar bear from Great Nature who can restand rear guards and restand himself. Honestly, the deck is pretty interesting. I remember I liked Polaris back in the old day just because he could get restands, and honestly, I love the restand aspect just because I don't know why I have a satisfaction of just standing the cards. It just gives me a form of satisfaction standing the cards, and I really like Polaris for that. And he can get numbers with it. Granted, he can only restand himself in another rear guard, but like he can hit numbers with it, so fair enough for me. Let's go ahead and get this started. First up, we have our starter in Blackboard Parrot. Grade 0 boost, 10k shield, 6k base. Auto when it's rode upon, draw a card, then if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 1 or greater, put a quick shield ticket to your hand. Standard ability, you draw something when you ride on top of it, and then if you went second, most likely you will get a quick shield unless they got grade locked. Either way, really good ability. Just standard though, you know, it's a free draw that you use and then discard what you'll use for discard fodder. So, I mean, a quick shield which you use for discard fodder. So it's fine the way it is. Good, just a good grade 1. Next up, we have our triggers. We run 6 draw triggers in total, 2 of them being Slip Pangolin and the other being the Draw PG, which we'll get later too. 6 fronts in Correction Chinchilla and Castanet Donkey, and then we have our 4 Draw PG and Cable Sheep. Grade 0 boost, 0 shield, 5k base, draw trigger, continue sentinel, you have 4 sentinels in your deck. Auto guard circle, when placed, discard a card from your hand, one of these cannot be into the battle. So, there is a reason to run like more crits and fronts with Polaris, because Polaris needs to hit a certain number for him to restand, and with the numbers that he requires for him to restand and the other unit to restand, putting pressure on it with criticals is better, but then also getting fronts so that they can get more power on their own is also better. But the reason why I'm running draws here is because none of that will do you any good if you don't have rear guards to call to begin with. And what I mean by that is if you don't have if, say for example, you don't have like Amber's Triangle, the thing that makes it the easiest to hit the numbers in Polaris with this deck, and instead you have a trigger, well, you know, you're not going to obviously hit the number most likely unless you get really lucky. Well, at least if you have something like Geograph Giant, which is barely under the Amber's Triangular, then at least you're almost hitting it, so if not like barely hitting it. So like, you know, adding the draw triggers helps for consistency and allowing you to get hand cards. So, and maybe because the Minibelly is also a big belly in my opinion support card because of what it used to do, so that definitely might not be a reason why I'm doing it. Either way, I prefer the 6 draws and 6 fronts just for consistency purposes, but also because the fronts actually do add power, make the numbers bigger. And then we have our Insurance Dr. Carebat as our heal trigger, just because. On to our grade 1s. 3 copies of Tapping Cat, AK base, 10k shield, grade 1 with boost. Auto, when it's retired from rear or discarded from your deck. Soul Blast 1 and perform one of the following. You either draw 1 card or choose one of your rear guards and you may get +5 to it. All around, I think it's a fine ability. It's just 1 Soul Blast and you either get a draw out of it or you get +5k out of it, and it makes your numbers hit closer to Polaris's requirement, which is really good. And honestly, I kind of use it for the draw, mainly because this deck just refuses to give me a Polaris without tryharding. So, you know, Tapping Cat's really good. And the Soul Blast problem in this deck is only existent if you let it exist. There's only like 2 cards here that I think is worth using their Soul Blast skill for, and there's only 2 cards in this deck that are actually requiring Soul Blast. So, this being one of them, if you play it right, you won't have a Soul Blast problem. But if you're in my case and Polaris won't show up, okay, you might have a Soul Blast problem. Either way, Tapping Cat is a nice grade 1 to have, 3 copies. If you're wondering why it's here over Quilling Duck Bill, is because this can give someone +5. That is why. Next up, we have 3 copies of History Scholar Bushboeckh, AK base, 10k shield, grade 1 with boost. Auto Van, when placed, discard a card from your hand and draw a card. Okay, so all around it's a really decent Vanguard ability. You know, you draw from your starter, hopefully get your quick shield because maybe you went second, discard that quick shield, get another draw. Really easy. And then auto rear at the end of the battle that it boosted, can be a Vanguard, it can be a rear guard, retire it, and one of your rear guards is +10 for the turn. Okay, so just make one of your numbers 10k bigger and make it so that Polaris can do something with it. All around, I like that because, you know, Polaris can share his power with another unit, and because he shares the power when he's boosted, say for example Polaris is at 20 because it was boosted by this, and say you had Amber's Triangular who was already at 27 because assuming you put an Accel 2 on it, this retires itself, gives +10 to the Triangular, so now it's at 37. Skill of Polaris, Counterblast 1, add another 20 at 57. You get 1 or 2 triggers or Amber's Triangular hit. Bushboeckh is really good. It's for free. It's a nice card. Put it at 3 of. 4 copies of Diligent Assistant Minibelly, our last grade 1, 8k base, 10k shield, grade 1 with boost. Continues rearguard during your turn if you have a unit on your additional rearguard circle, gets +5. Okay, this is here to put behind Polaris so you can make it bigger. That's why it's here. But its other ability is Auto Vanderveer. When placed from hand, look at top 5, look to 1 grade 3 from among them, put it to your hand, shuffle your deck, and if you put a card, you gotta discard 1. Okay, this is here to help me get Polaris because the deck doesn't want me to get Polaris easily. But then, this thing doesn't want to show up in my hand, and the only time it wants to get called is when I use Measured Fossa, which, for this thing to go off, it requires it to be placed from hand, but Measured Fossa calls from deck. Which means I don't get to use this card. Literally, the deck itself is constantly working against me, so I have a hard time going to Polaris. I don't know why it does this, but it does. Either way, Minibelly is a nice addition to the deck. It's a 13k booster, making Polaris hit harder, and you get to add cards to your hand from top 5. Good card, 4 copies. Next up, we have our grade 2s. We have 2 copies in Birding Kangaroo, 9k base, 5k shield, grade 2 Thundercept. Continues rearguard during the battle of the attack if your Vanguard is a grade 3 or greater, and this unit's power is 20k or greater. Your opponent cannot call Sentinels from his or her hand to guard circle. Okay, for some reason, this became the unit that you tried ramming your opponent into. I mean, guaranteed regardless, as long as this thing hits a number, it's of 20 or greater, which is just an 11k more, it's going to nullify Sentinels. But if for some reason you're trying to make this a thing that you restand with Polaris, yeah, it's a good target, because if you were going to use it to restand Polaris and you actually got it to the 70k that requires Polaris to restand at, that's a 70k swing with no Sentinels. Even if they block Polaris with a Sentinel, they have to guard this thing, which is a 70k swing with no Sentinels. 2 copies. Like, honestly, if it had, and if those deck could, there's a way you could turbo this out, but in my opinion, it's not really worth it. I prefer to have more options than just try to have one strategy or like one specific unit and try to kill them with it. 2 copies of Birding Kangaroo though, because it's really useful. 3 copies of Compass Line, 13k base, grade 2, intercept 5k shield, auto Vanderveer. At the end of your turn, choose one of your rear guards and retire it. This effect is mandatory. Okay, here's what this is here. This can hit force numbers without boosting, so automatically that's good. It is a good card to sit on grade 2, so you can't get rushed, especially by Protect decks or Accel decks. And it's here to retire Tapping Cat. That is literally the only 3 reasons it's here. 13k base, can kill Tapping Cat, who can in turn get you a draw, because that's the only skill I ever use, and what was the other reason? It can also prevent a rush. That's why it's here. Prevents a rush, kills Tapping Cat. That's why it's here. Still a really good card. It is for free and is a nice grade 2 just to have on rear. 3 copies. 4 copies of our second to last grade 2, Measured Fossa, grade 2, intercept, 5k shield, 9k base, auto Vanderveer. When placed, counterbalance 1, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, call up to 1 card from them to rear, and put the rest into drop zone. If only it said add the card to hand and then put it to field, because if it did, then you would go off, but it doesn't. So I mean, it's still a good card deck. It is a counterblast in a deck that has no counter chargers. There was 2 counter charges I could think of, but one of them was a Hamsuke card, and the other one was a specifically required Big Belly on Vanguard card, so couldn't use it. But this is still pretty good because it gets you a unit and auto rear once per turn when it attacks if your Vanguard's a grade 3 or greater. So almost one, choose one of your rear guards, it gets +10 for the turn, and at the end of the turn, retire that unit. So pretty much the rear guard dies, but it can swing into anything for you. So you can swing into a rear guard, still Solar Blast, and give a +10 to something else. Yeah, this is made to make Polaris easier to hit, because now if you do what I said earlier with Polaris, Ambers, and Polaris boosted on an Accel 2, that immediately means all you need for Ambers to now hit the required number for both it and Polaris to stand is either a trigger or or Ambers hitting. So either way, Measured Fossa is really good. Make sure you attack with this first. Even if the attack won't hit, make sure you attack with this first, so the unit that you're going to try to restand with Polaris' effect is hitting for bigger numbers from the get-go. I messed that up against Master Beetle. I still won, but you don't want to make that mistake. 4 copies of Measured Fossa. He's really helpful in the deck, except he has this little problem, which is fine though. 4 copies. 4 copies of our last grade 2, which is Geograph Giant, grade 2, intercept, 5k shield, 9k base. Continues rear guard if it's on additional rear guard circle. This unit gets plus 8k power during both players' turns. So he's a 17k base, hard to hit. On your turn, he's a 22k base. If you're on Accel 2, if you're on Accel 1, he's a 27k base. Okay, makes it so that you can hit Polaris numbers ever so slightly easier, and just an additional card that you kind of want to run. So I give it a 4 because he's actually really nice, and he's nice to always have there, and he was also in my original Great Nature deck, and he has carried me ever since that day. 4 copies. 3 copies of Amber's Triangular, the thing that you want to have on board at all times. 12k base, grade 3, twin drive, Accel gift. Continuous Vanguard rear during your turn. If you have no other rear guard circles in the same column as it, this unit gets plus 10. So, I mean, no other rear guards, not rear guard circles in the same column as it gets plus 10. So, you know, it doesn't matter if your opponent has like a full column in front of it, as long as you don't have anything behind it, or in front of it for that matter, they're your cards, boy becomes a 22k base. And if you put this on Accel gift, it's at least a 27. Because it's already in its own column. And then auto Vanguard rear, when its attack hits, one of your rear guards gets plus 10 for the turn. Good news is he can just choose himself. So if you just hit with this, you can give himself the plus 10, and then automatically say he's in Accel 2. Now he's at 37. You swing with Polaris, and automatically all you need is like a 1k more from Polaris's base number, and the boy will at least restand this. All around, Amber's is a really good grade 3, gets you power. Really nice card, hits for numbers, 3 of. Next up, we have 3 copies of Armed Instructor Bison. I said earlier that I have I just find it enjoyable to stand rear guard, so I added another rear guard standard to the deck, but also because this deck can hit decent numbers, might as well make use of that by swinging more, even if I'm not on Polaris. Grade 3, twin drive, Accel gift, 12k base, auto Vanguard rear, when it attacks, counterblast 1 of your other rear guards gets plus 5 for the turn, and if it's on Van, stand that unit. So, it swings. Counterblast, so same causes Polaris. Someone gets plus 5, so a lot less than Polaris, because at least Polaris would get plus 12. But someone gets plus 5, and if this unit's on Fan, you get to stand it. Okay, really nice. Help set up Polaris is a pseudo Polaris, which was released earlier. And this boy was like Geograph Giant was also my original Great Nature deck, and he was my main grade 3, and he helped out a lot, and I still love him for it. Granted, I don't run him anymore because there's no space for him in it, but I greatly do appreciate him. And he's genuinely kind of the reason why I won with this deck in the first place, and all around, he's a really nice card. I gave him a 3 of. And finally, we have our last normal unit and our last unit in the deck, which is our last card in the deck, Battler of the Twin Brush Polaris. Like the name, love the art. The skill is kind of annoying. Grade 3, twin drive, Accel gift, 12k base, auto Van, once per turn. At the end of the battle, this unit attacked, counterblast 1 of your rear guards. Choose one of your rear guards, and that unit gets this unit's power until end of turn. Basically, that counts boost as well, if I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it counts boost, correct me if I'm wrong. So, you know, it's an 8 plus 12, most likely. So, assuming that you don't add any additional power, because you're boosting with a grade 1, so 20. So then plus 20 to a unit. If you shove it on the Ambers as is either already hit or has a trigger on it, it's going to hit the 50. And then if the chosen unit's power is 50 or greater, stand the unit, and if the chosen power is 70 or greater, and your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, this thing stands and it gets plus 15. So possible this thing at 27, and then the other rear guard's at least at 70, and you have another 2 drive checks. All around, pretty good skill, and he can pop up another unit too, so you don't even have to get a restand out of it. You can just swing at him and then do the Care Bear skill from the Sylvan Horn Beast, and then just add power to a unit. Now, the thing I hate about this card is that it only has one effect. I'm not saying you need multiple effects to be a good card, but I wish I just had another ability that was maybe like Soul Blast 1. Yes, it adds to the Soul Blast problem of Great Nature, but it would at least make it somewhat fair. Soul Blast 1, for the turn, all of your choose a unit, and it gets plus 5 for the turn. Or this and that unit get plus 5 for the turn. Makes it easier for you to hit the number. I wish it was like that. It's not. I still think it's a good skill though, because it's just powerful, gets you a restand, and still does something, and he's still a good, cool card for it. So all around, I am a 4 because he's really nice. And then we have our gifts, 5 copies of Accel 1, 5 copies of Accel 2, because I don't think you need more than that, because you're not going to ride more than that. Both of them have similar skills. When they're both acquired, they go to the top left, and then you alternate between that and the top right. So once you put in the top left, the next time you go to top right, and then you switch between them a bunch. The difference is Accel 1, the unit on the new front rear guard circle gets plus 10 during your turn. Accel 2, when it's placed, you draw a card, and then the unit on it gets plus 5 during your turn. So Accel 2 is better for consistency, and Accel 1 is better for power. If in Polaris, I say go for Accel 2, because earlier, like I said, that's the reason why I run more draws, just so I can have more hand cards and make sure that I have a unit that can swing, that can almost hit Polaris numbers, if not hit it, without triggers. Or like, I mean, you're obviously going to need a trigger at some point, but easier to hit without like double triggering. But if you want to go for Accel 1 because maybe like you know your opponent has a very powerful deck and you want to kill them quickly, go with Accel 1. And then we have a quick show, which is one of your attacks gets plus 5k for the battle, nothing too special about it. You typically use this for discard fodder of your PG, which is all the way down here, or for this thing, So yeah. And then that's it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. All around, this deck is pretty interesting. Like I said before, and I said that before as well, I love just to like stand rear guards. I get a satisfaction out of just doing the movement of resting them, and I get the satisfaction out of standing them too. And that's why I love a lot of decks I can just stand rear guards. If the attacks don't hit, I'll probably just do it just so I can feel it. And it's fun, and you can also hit numbers with it. It's basically what I'm trying to think of like what an example of this would be. It's like what an Accel deck could have been back if now this was an Accel deck back in V, like if this was back in V when V was the main series, I think Great Nature would have done pretty well, just because like depending on when you put this in, I don't think a lot of decks would have coverage to this, just because of like it's like once more depending on where you put it in. I don't think a lot of decks would have coverage against this, because swinging for a unit with 70k and then another unit with 27, one of them forces out PGs, and if you somehow make it this thing, then you're guarding that with a bunch of triggers. So yeah, all around Polaris is really good. Gets numbers, gets rear guard swings, and get multi-attack. All around, I find it fun, and hopefully you guys like it too. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, donate to the Patreon, join Discord, follow Twitch, and I'll see you all next one. Don't forget to stand up your vanguards.